The private observations of a prolific 20th century writer are about to find their way onto the most public medium of the 21st century. It's almost Orwellian. No, wait, it actually is Orwellian. In 1938 and 1939, George Orwell, best known for his novels Animal Farm and 1984, wrote a series of diaries. Now, every entry from those diaries is going to be serially published online in a blog-like format by the Orwell Prize, a literary organization based in England. The diaries document Orwell's travels through Morocco, his stint fighting in the Spanish Civil War, and his observations about politics, life, and the world around him. For the record, here is George Orwell's son, Richard Blair, reading one of the diary entries for the BBC.
9th of October 1938, Morocco. Arab drug kif, said to have some kind of intoxicating effect, smoked in long bamboo pipes with earthenware head about the size of a cigarette holder. The drug resembles chopped grass. Unpleasant taste and, so far as I am concerned, no effect. Sale said to be illegal, though it can be acquired everywhere for 1 franc for about a tablespoonful. The one smell one rarely encounters here is garlic, which apparently the Arabs do not much use. Almost a majority of the ripe olives are now on sale are purple. Possibly these are the ones black olives are made from. Dates getting very ripe. They seem to be rather dry and inferior kind.
For more on Orwell's private but soon-to-be public journals, we reached Jean Seaton. She's the director of the Orwell Prize, and we reached her in London.
Jean Seaton, when we hear that very spare, detailed documentation of life at that time, what should we take from that about what was happening in George Orwell's life at the time?
Well, George Orwell had just returned from fighting in the Spanish Civil War and had written a great book called Homage to Catalonia. He'd been wounded. He had been forced to completely reevaluate his politics. He had went and came back with a searing insight into the role of communism and that it had played in that war. And what you get out of the diary is that this is a man who is omnivorously observant, incredibly curious, incredibly interested in the reality of other people's lives, and any facts will do. And it's an everyday, rather domestic, terribly curious eye on the world. And that, of course, is the hallmark. I mean, he'd also written, by then, Down and Out in London and Paris, and The Road to Wigan Pier. He was a formidable social observer.
Is the style of the entries as spare throughout, or do they get more expansive?
No, it does get more expansive. You'll see, I mean, what this bit of the diary doesn't have is the polemic and indeed passionate Orwell. And as we get closer to the Second World War, you know, a man of immense decency and principle, quite hard won by, very, very intellectually brave, very physically brave, actually. You know, when he's recording gossip about British fascists like Sir Oswald Mosley, or when he's observing what he cares about very, very desperately, you know, whether the British government will give up doing appeasement and take the fascists on, then it becomes more colourful. And he was one of the great polemic writers. I mean, you know, this is the man that's going to produce 1984 and Animal Farm. Are polemics, but they are very controlled and written and mythologized in a way. So, but this is Orwell as an observer of life.
Why has the Orwell Prize decided to publish these diary entries at this time?
Because it's the 70th anniversary of them being written. These diaries are available in a printed form, but we've got a wonderful website, the Orwell Prize, and we're very, very obviously interested in promoting, you know, people understanding the values that Orwell had, and we're putting them out day by day, which I think is actually a very engaging way of reading.
And they'll be on the same date, right? I mean, it's actually a blog style, and the dates will match.
Oh, exactly. We'll put it out on the days he wrote it. So if you pick up a diary in a book, it's always in a way slightly not as the the author wrote it. You know what I mean? Because you can go forward and backwards. But we're unfolding it in the real time, 70 years to the day, and we will stop this particular tranche on September the 3rd, 1939, when the Second World War breaks out, which is an enormous relief for Orwell, who immediately goes out and tries to join up.
What do you think Orwell would think about the diaries being published in this way? I mean, they have been available, as you say, for a long time. Did he intend them to be read?
They're a kind of a testimony. I think they're the working papers of a working writer who may turn some of this stuff, particularly on Marrakesh, into articles or into something bigger. So they're both a resource and, in a sense, a practice house for certain kinds of writing. I mean, he would have taken to the net. He was a man full of opinions and views, and always unexpected ones.
You say he would have taken to the net. Do you imagine him blogging?
Oh, yes, because he had views about, well-informed views. He'd been a colonial administrator in Burma. He knew the East. During the war, he broadcast into India. He'd fought in Spain. He had very clear views about what was going on in Russia when lots of other people were very, blinded by all sorts of ideologies. He worked as a kitchen assistant in Paris and London. This was a globalized man before global was a word in people's vocabulary.
I think a vast number of us will have read 1984, An Animal Farm, in high school. I'm wondering, though, what you see as the kind of impact these blog entries, these diary entries, might have on people today. What should we take from them that might inform us in the current time?
Be sceptical about your own views. Be on the side of justice. You see that all the way through. I mean, that observation is on the side of treating people decently, always. Kind of use your eyes. Go there, see it, smell it, reconsider what you think, and enjoy yourself. I mean, several of the things about recipes. There's a wonderful recipe for slow gin. This is a man with pleasure as well as politics.
Well, it's fascinating. I'm sure many people will be eager to hear them as they appear every day. I appreciate you sharing this with us. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Go out and read Orwell.
Yes,
okay.
indeed.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
That was Jean Seaton, the director of the Orwell Prize in London, England. The Orwell Prize website will begin rolling out George Orwell's diary entries on August the 9th. For the record, here is George Orwell's son, Richard Blair, again with another reading from his father's diaries.
Gibraltar, 7th of September 1938. Spanish destroyer José Luis Díaz lying in harbour. A huge shell hole, probably 4 or 5 feet across, in her side, just above water level, on port side, about 15 to 20 feet behind bow. Flying Spanish Republican flag. The men were at first apparently prevented from going ashore, now allowed at certain hours to naval recreation ground, i.e. not to mix with local population. No attempt being made to mend the ship. Overheard local English resident. It's coming right enough. Hitler's going to have Czechoslovakia all right. If he doesn't get it now, he'll go on and on until he does. Better let him have it at once. We shall be ready by 1941.